My name is Lily. I'm 26 years old and I've been married to my husband, Jake, who's 27, for 3 years. We also have a sweet little boy who's almost 2. Our life has always been filled with love, laughter, and trust. Or at least, I thought it was. But 3 weeks ago, a seed of doubt was planted in my mind. And everything began to change. It all started when my friend Sarah called me. Sarah works in the same company as Jake, although they're in different departments. She told me Jake had a work wife. I didn't even know what that meant at first. But Sarah explained it was a term for someone at work you're unusually close to, almost like a second partner. Sarah said this woman was around our age and had joined Jake's team 3 months ago. She sounded concerned and told me I should keep an eye on things. To me, it looked like normal coworker behavior. Just 2 people working together. Jake had already mentioned her to me. He said she was new to the team and he was helping her settle in. He had been completely open about their work relationship. So I didn't think much of it. That night, after Sarah's call, I decided to check Jake's phone. We've always had an open device policy in our marriage. So I didn't feel like I was invading his privacy. I looked through his text and emails. Everything was professional. There was nothing that raised any red flags. The next day, I brought it up with Jake. I told him what Sarah had said. He laughed and reassured me. "There's nothing to worry about," he said, holding my hand. "She's just a colleague. It's all worked." I trusted him. So I decided to let it go. But Sarah wasn't done. Over the next few days, she kept texting me updates. She'd say things like, "I saw them talking in the break room," or "they left a meeting together." It was starting to get under my skin, but when I asked her for solid proof, she didn't have any. She just insisted something was going on. I started to doubt myself. Jake wasn't acting any differently. He wasn't hiding his phone or sneaking around. He was as attentive and loving as ever. We were still spending quality time together. And everything at home felt normal. Then, Jake got a promotion. It was big news. And we were thrilled. We celebrated with a fancy dinner at home. For a moment, I forgot about everything Sarah had been saying. But the very next day, Jake came home with a bottle of wine. It had a sticky note on it that said, "Congrats on the promotion." There was a little heart drawn at the end. The moment I saw it, my heart sank. I couldn't stop myself. I confronted Jake right then and there. "Is this from her?" I demanded. "Are you cheating on me?" My voice shook with anger and fear. Jake looked confused and hurt. He denied everything, but I couldn't believe him that night. I cried myself to sleep, feeling the weight of my doubts. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a much bigger mistake. The day after our fight, I felt ashamed of my outburst. Jake was still kind and loving, even though I had accused him of something he hadn't done. I apologized and he forgave me. But the doubts Sarah had planted wouldn't leave my mind. It lingered like a shadow and I couldn't shake it off. A few days later, Jake told me he had a work trip coming up. He rarely traveled for work, but this time, it was necessary. He explained that his entire team, including the woman Sarah had called his work wife, would be going. My heart sank. I smiled and wished him a good trip, but inside, my mind was racing. Sarah didn't help. She messaged me the day Jake left, reminding me that this was the perfect opportunity for something to happen between him and his coworker. Her constant warnings made me paranoid. Despite Jake's reassurances and the lack of any real evidence, I couldn't silence the nagging doubts. Finally, I decided I needed to know the truth. After Jake left, I rented a car and followed him. I didn't tell anyone except my best friend Emma, who agreed to watch my son. Emma warned me, "If you find nothing, you'll regret this." But I couldn't stop myself. Jake had chosen a drive instead of flying, and I kept a safe distance behind him during the journey. Once he reached his destination, I checked into a hotel nearby and began tracking his movements. I knew it was wrong, but my anxiety overpowered my guilt. For 3 days, I watched from afar. Jake went to meetings during the day, had dinner with his colleagues in the evening, and then returned to his hotel room. Every night, he called me to say good night. His voice was as warm and loving as ever. I never saw anything suspicious. Jake wasn't alone with the woman Sarah had mentioned, and there were no secret meetings or signs of infidelity. On the third day, he finished his work and drove home. I left early that morning, arriving home before him. When Jake walked through the door, I greeted him with a warm hug and his favorite meal. He had no idea what I had done, but the guilt was crushing me. I realized then that I had gone too far. Jake had done nothing to deserve my mistrust. That evening, I told Emma how ashamed I felt. She gave me an ultimatum. Either confess to Jake or she would tell him herself. Now I'm stuck. I know what I did was wrong, but I'm terrified of losing the man I love. Should I come clean and risk breaking his trust, or keep my secret and live with the guilt forever?